What's up, everybody? This is Devin White, linebacker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're listening to the LCC Network. Go Bucks.
Hey everyone, welcome to Commissioner's Clubhouse on the LCC Network for episode 14 of the offseason. This episode actually was set to be something totally different. In fact, this was supposed to be like a early IDP rankings episode, but I was like, you know what? I mean, we can do that anytime. And because we have the inaugural developmental draft happening next weekend, I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to do an episode on that. So that's what we're going to do today, or tonight, as I'm recording this at almost 10 o'clock on a Thursday. That's what we're going to dive into. In fact, it's going to be the top 3 players from quarterbacks, running backs, wide receiver / tight end. Spoiler alert, they're just receivers. I didn't have any tight ends in my top 3. Top 3 defensive linemen, so that includes edge rushers and defensive ends and defensive tackles, linebackers, and defensive backs. Another fun fact, no corners made my list for obvious reasons. Although I will say a rookie corner can be good because they're getting a lot of targets are going in their direction to the receivers they're guarding. So I think it's worth noting that actually. But before we get into that, just a reminder, of course, the developmental draft is this weekend. Obviously, or not this weekend, this coming weekend, as you probably already knew, because of, well, that's what we're talking about here tonight. But another big event coming up, we have the LCC keeper deadline set for May 8th. That is quickly approaching. I mean, we are literally not this Sunday, not this coming Sunday, and not the Sunday after that, but the Sunday after that is when we have the keeper deadline. So keep that in mind. It's coming up. It'll be here before you know it. I'm sure we'll see another whirlwind of trading going on. There's some trade rumors that I've heard about. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, so I won't mention that. But be on the lookout. It should be a pretty crazy end. It's not the end of the offseason. I shouldn't even say that. And people will still trade afterwards, but you won't see it just sporadically. Yeah, I don't know. We're basically, if you think about it, we're kind of kicking off the offseason here this coming weekend, because the developmental draft will be the first time this offseason that anyone will be able to add additional players to their roster, not through trade. So, and actually, let me take that a step back, because people might be wondering, can I actually start them if I draft them? And no, you cannot start a developmental player in your lineup this year because they're in college or high school. Technically, if you wanted to draft a high school guy, I don't know if I would advise it, but if you got a friend or a relative and you want them on your fantasy team, why not, I guess. But as soon as they enter the NFL player pool, then of course you can draft them in the rookie draft, basically for free. They will count towards one of your 3 rookie picks that you're allowed, so keep that in mind. And the same rules follows, like you are stuck with that player unless you trade them, but you can keep them free the following year and so on. So let's dive into this. So this is our first ever episode doing this, first ever year doing a developmental draft. I know Cody was pretty adamant about like being against it. I don't know if Cody's against just the premise of a developmental draft, or if it's more the teams that are allowed to be involved in the developmental draft. Which if it's latter, then I can kind of understand that. And I'd be, I'm all ears to hear about different ways of picking teams that are able to participate. But I do think it should be capped at 12. If we have the entire league participating, then it really kind of defeats the purpose of the rookie draft later on. And that's not the purpose of this. This is supposed to dabble into future rookie draft pools without compromising the entire player pool of that class once they become NFL players. So again, only 12 players are going to be taken. some of these guys won't even enter the draft in 2023. They may not enter until 2024 or 2025. Who knows? Depending on if they get redshirted, if maybe they come back for a senior year. We don't see that all the time, but it does happen. And actually, a couple of the guys I'm going to talk about tonight are in that case. So let's get it started here with our rankings for the developmental draft. Here we go. All right, so we're going to start with quarterback. And I talked to a couple people about this, and it's going to depend on the person, the type of person, their situation, if they even want to get a quarterback here, because in our league, you can only roster one quarterback in a season. Of course, you can have one developmental quarterback and a real NFL quarterback, because again, this player does not count against your roster limits for this coming season because they're still in college. So keep that in mind. But if you do bring them onto your roster once they enter the NFL, well, then that's a different story entirely. And at that point, again, you're stuck with them unless you trade them away. So to start it out, I got to go with a guy, and most experts are torn between these two quarterbacks. My number one is C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State. Dude's got a cannon for an arm. I mean, I'm telling you, this guy, he's kind of a dude-all QB, honestly. And we didn't get to see him, obviously, in the national championship games. Ohio State wasn't there. But just a total dual-threat guy, like the perfect fantasy quarterback. I mean, he's 6'3", 215. I think his 40 is like a 4.65, which is really good for a QB. And just a great player, man. I'm super excited to see him this year. I know Buckeye fans are too. Definitely, without a doubt, they're my number one quarterback going into the following year. So be on the lookout for him. My number two, and some people would have him number one, but I get it. I get it, right? So this is his first time on the big stage, but Bryce Young is my number two. I just wasn't super impressed with what I saw against Georgia, and he has his whole year to develop, man. So he's going to be better than that. But he's 5'11", 194, really built a lot like Russell Wilson was in college and going into the NFL. Kind of a shorter guy with a lot of speed. And he also played against a tough Georgia defense. So you got to cut him a break a little bit. But I think there are some people who are saying this year you will see a Bryce Young who exceeds a Tua and a Mac Jones level, college level quarterback. So be on the lookout for Bryce Young. I think he's worth looking at, especially if you like that fast QB. And number three, and some people, my Gamecock family, fan family, is going to murder me for not mentioning Spencer Rattler at all in this, but I think he has potential to be a top 3 guy. However, with the situation he's got going in Carolina, he doesn't have a lot of support, man. I get it. Like, this is a time for him to shine, but he's in a tougher conference, harder schedule. Offensive line and weapons just aren't as good as they were in Oklahoma. And I do think you will see a better quarterback this year, but I just don't think he's going to have the same stats as this next guy. And I think we'll get drafted before him. And it reminds me a lot of Cam Newton, actually, the way he's built. But Anthony Richardson out of Florida, 6'4", 236. I think his 40 is like roughly a 4.5. So even just flat out fast, man. Now, biggest knock on him, he almost threw as many interceptions as touchdowns this past year. But again, a younger quarterback and someone who's definitely I would imagine he's going to be there in the 2022 draft. He did play behind Emory Jones, I want to say, this past year, but did get some chances to play, and I think there's a lot to be seen. We haven't seen enough, obviously, to call this guy like the best, but I'm interested because we haven't seen a good Florida Gator like college level quarterback, in my opinion. Jesus, maybe. I mean, it's got to be Tim Tebow, right? I mean, I know Tim Tebow didn't translate well into the NFL, but that was the last time they had a top level college quarterback. So Anthony Richardson, definitely a guy to look out for. I don't think we're going to see a lot of quarterbacks taken in the developmental draft, and I'm not even sure we'll see 3, maybe not even 2. I mean, I think if we see 1, that's going to be a big deal. So that shows someone has a lot of confidence in this guy, whoever they're getting a quarterback. So keep that in mind. Next up, we're going to go to running back. And this guy's without a doubt my number one. My number one player. He should be going in everyone's developmental draft. Let's just go ahead and play the sound drop for him.
If you want to crown him, then crown her.
We're going to talk about Texas running back, and he's on the cover here. Everyone's looking at it. Bijan Robinson. This man is electric, to say the least. I think everyone is super high on him. I've seen some draft projections, him going actually in the first round. We all know how hard that is in today's NFL for a running back to go that early. But a 6 foot, 214, runs a 4.48. He's a beast. He is a beast. He averaged 5.8 yards per carry last year. Ran for over 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns. He also had almost 300 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. So if you do the math on that, it's like 15 total touchdowns, man, last year. I think the sky's a limit, barring injuries, of course, and I don't want to jinx him. I think Alex would be crazy not to get him. I can't imagine Alex not getting Bijan Robinson. He's like the number one guy, in my opinion, in this entire developmental class. That's enough said. I mean, dude's a beast. If he slips past the 101, whoever has the 102, man, you are so lucky. I'm so jealous. But next up is I'm gonna struggle to pronounce his name. But Jamir Gibbs, I believe is how you pronounce it, running back from Alabama, transferred from Georgia Tech. And how often do you see that, man? I mean, Georgia Tech's like a subpar ACC team. This guy transfers up into the big leagues, go to Alabama, where we've just seen nothing but great running backs come out of Nick Saban's offenses. At least great college level running backs, that is. He's 5'11", 200 pounds, runs a 4.5, quick. And I think last year he had like almost 800 yards rushing, a little over 5 yards per carry. Just was really great at Georgia Tech. Now, buyer beware with Gibbs. We all know Alabama likes a committee, right? And I do wonder how that plays into his draft stock going forward, because if he's not the, quote unquote dude all back and he's not the lead guy, I think that hurts his stock. And I think we all know, I mean, you can be a great running back, but if you end up in the wrong situation in the NFL, you're going to be fantasy irrelevant for the most part. So monitor that situation. Buyer beware, but definitely worth getting. I expect Gibbs to go in the first 4 picks easily. Actually, I think I wouldn't be surprised if the first 5 picks are all running backs, just knowing how the way this league is. But next up is Zach Evans out of Ole Miss. 5'11", 195, runs a 4.49. Very fast guy. Averaged 7 yards per carry. He played at TCU last year. Transferred to Ole Miss. He had almost 650 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. And man, I just don't know what to say about this guy. He reminds me of kind of Jameson's favorite type of running back. That speed back who can take it to the next level. And we all know how Lane Kiffin likes to run that offense, man. I think you're going to see a great Zach Evans. I think some people would call me crazy not having him as my number 2 on this list for running backs, but it's hard for me not to go with an Alabama running back. You know what I mean? After all these years, I think you'd be kind of crazy not to. So Zach Evans, that's why he falls to 3, just because of historical reasons, the way Alabama produces guys. So let's keep it moving. We're going to go on to our receivers now. Our receiver / tight end. Again, though, I didn't really include any tight ends in this. I just didn't feel like there were a lot of viable options there that would be worth taking, at least, in the developmental draft. But my number 1 is Jackson Smith. I'm going to butcher the second half of his last name, but Njigba, I think is how you pronounce it, out of Ohio State. Dude is going to be a beast. I mean, he's pretty much everyone's consensus number one receiver going into this year for college. I don't know how he couldn't. I mean, just great quarterback, throwing him the ball too, which makes it just easier. He's 6 foot, 197, runs a 4.45. He had a great year last year, man. Just a great year. He had, get this, 1,600 yards, man, and 9 touchdowns. Just crazy. And he dominated in the Rose Bowl versus Utah. I mean, I don't know if you can say enough about him. He's flat out fantastic. I don't think me personally, I'm just not a guy who likes to draft rookie running backs. But if I had to get someone, it would definitely be Jackson, man. He's great. I don't see how you can't pick him. I think a team is definitely going to get him in the first round. Maybe a top 10 pick next season easily. In my opinion, at least. Number 2 on my list of receiver is Myles Murphy. Oh, sorry. Got ahead of myself. That's defensive line. Sorry. Spoiled that. He's mentioned in my defensive line rankings. But it's Jordan Addison out of Pittsburgh. I think some people think I'm probably a little crazy having him at number 2. Some people might agree. He's 6'2", 175. Tall guy, very light on his feet. You know what I mean? He needs to put on some weight, I think, in my opinion. But he runs a 4.5 40. He caught 100 passes last year for almost 1,600 yards and 17 touchdowns. I think that, he had Kenny Pickett at quarterback, so obviously Pickett helps. But I think this is where he truly shines, where he gets to prove himself as the guy in Pittsburgh. And if he does that, this guy's easily one of the best. I mean, you can't argue against it. And then number 3 at receiver, I've got Zach. God, I just keep misreading the lines up here. Sorry, I almost said Zach Evans again, a running back. But no, sorry. Marvin Mibs out of Oklahoma is a guy that I'm kind of high on this year. He lost Spencer Rattler, and they've lost a lot of talent, obviously, at Oklahoma. The guy's transferred out after the coaching change. But he's 5'11", 175 or 177, I believe. Runs a 4.45. Some people have him first round talent. Some people have second round talent. I think we're just gonna have to see. Honestly, Oklahoma's situation is very interesting this year to watch. I think Marvin is definitely like the number 1 receiver on that team. And Oklahoma historically over the past couple of years, I mean, man, they've been lighting up through the air. I think Marvin Mibs can easily be that guy. Easily have another over 1,000 yards. I think easily, probably pushing more like 1,500. And I'd like to see kind of what happens with him, but I think Marvin is worth looking at. Now, whether Marvin actually gets taken in the developmental draft in our league, I think is a different question. I think we're really looking at possibly like 2 receivers going, and I think Marvin might just miss out barely. And he's not. Some people have him like a little bit further back in their dynasty and college rankings, but I like him in the top 3. I really do. I think he's like the number 1 threat, I think, of that offense in Oklahoma. And so I think you should definitely monitor that situation going forward. All right, so now we're getting defensive line, finally, after I ruined it, basically. But number 1 actually is not Myles Murphy. It's Will Anderson. And I know he's technically a linebacker at Alabama. He's a junior, for those that don't know. So more than likely will be entering the NFL draft this coming offseason. But Will Anderson, dude, is a do-it-all edge rusher. He is classified as a true edge rusher. He could play interior probably if he wanted to, honestly. The dude is a freak of nature. I think everyone kind of has him as their consensus edge in this offseason, going into the 2022 college football season. I mean, he's just a beast, man. I mean, you'd have to be kind of crazy not to have him pretty high on your list, in my opinion. I've seen him getting drafted as a top 5 pick by some analysts this coming year. I think that this draft class coming year is going to be pretty QB heavy. I don't know if he can quite get there, in my opinion. but he's big, man. I mean, he's good in a 3-point stance, 2-point stance. He kind of, the way Alabama's defense is kind of a hybrid model / 3-4, and Will's going to be in both. I don't think you can overlook him. I think if people weren't so thirsty for running backs in our league, I think honestly Will Anderson would probably be a top 3 pick in our developmental draft. I think he's going to fall just because people are wanting running backs so badly. And I think that as a result, someone's going to get a complete steal later in the draft. A complete steal. Will is just a massive human being. So look out for him. Now, number 2 is Myles Murphy from Clemson. He's junior this coming year. I think a lot of people, some people say he could possibly play outside in like a 3-4. But I really think of him as more of a 4-3 defensive end, in my opinion. I'm interested to see what some of my Clemson friends have to say, but he's 6'5", 275. I think he, actually I don't know his 40. I didn't write that down. But 2020, he had 51 tackles, 12 for a loss, 4 sacks. I mean, just freaking dominated. And then 2021, dude has 37 tackles, but 7 sacks. See that uptick there. And we've seen Clemson, man. They've produced some top-tier edge rushing talent. Some people even have him possibly playing defensive tackle in a 4-3. But I think he'd have to put on a lot of bulk, man, just for that to happen. I really see him more as a true defensive end, a 6'5", 275. Myles Murphy is someone you should definitely be looking at. And number 3 here, and this is not my only LSU player. I have at least one more to talk about later on the show, but BJ Ojulari is a junior out of LSU. I think that he kind of reminds me of like a shorter Brian Burns. He's 6'3", 244, runs a 4.75. You look at any kind of 2023 draft projections, it's going to be wild because we haven't even gotten the 2022 college football season. Some people have him as a first-round pick. Some people have him going to a third-round pick. And part of that is because we haven't seen a lot, honestly. BJ was not projected to be a true top-level talent at LSU last year because everyone was kind of all over I think his name's like Ali, or I want to say his first name's like Ali or something like that. But he was projected to be the guy in LSU in 2021. And as we know, LSU imploded last year, went the entire wrong direction. But BJ ended up being the guy, man. He collected 7 sacks and 54 tackles. Just a monster, man. I think a lot of people have him as like a 3-4 outside guy. He's got to put on a little bit more weight, in my opinion, for that. But I like him. I like him a lot. I think you should definitely look out for him as a junior. Let's get into some linebackers. So again, I didn't include Will Anderson in this because I think he's going to end up being an edge rusher in the NFL. But look out for Trenton Simpson, my other Clemson player on my list. He's a junior. Trenton he worries me as a Gamecock fan. I mean, of course, we've struggled against Clemson over the past, I don't even know how many years now. But this is a guy that I really fear on that defense is Trenton. He's 6'3", 225. I don't know I've seen 2 different projected depth charts for Clemson. One of them has him as an outside linebacker. One of them has him as an interior guy. But regardless, he's very versatile, very athletic. He runs a 4.65, I believe. He got 65 tackles, 6 sacks last season, and 2 passes defended just in last year alone. Obviously, with those kind of sack numbers, you got to think like this guy, he could be converted to outside easily. But I think he is probably going to be their inside guy, which makes me believe that more than likely we'll get to see him be that in the NFL. I think Trenton's going to be very interesting to watch. He is a junior, so I would expect him to enter the LCC class of 2023 or 2024 at the very latest. Next up, redshirt senior Jeremy Banks out of Tennessee. Some people I think would probably call me crazy for putting him here. He's 6'1", 220, runs a 4.6. But man, last year he had 128 tackles, 5.5 sacks, pick, and 4 passes defended. This is a guy I think you got to really watch. Really watch. Has a lot of experience, obviously, because he's a redshirt senior, been around for a while. But he was a tackling machine last season, and I think he's someone you got to look out for. Albeit, I don't think the 2023 draft class, the NFL draft class, is going to be very stacked with interior linebackers, which means Jeremy Banks could actually go higher than he probably would in other draft classes, in my opinion. Be on the lookout for him. I think he could start somewhere. If he doesn't, maybe in a similar situation as we saw most of the linebackers from this past draft class, where, all right, they didn't start, but, expect some more things out of them in that second year. And Jeremy Banks is someone I'm interested to monitor in the SEC. But my last linebacker here, and I'm telling you, watch out for this guy. He's a sophomore out of Oregon, Noah Sewell, and his brother actually is in the NFL already. This guy is big. Actually, Oregon had him listed as a defensive tackle at one point. If that tells you anything about him, he could technically play on the outside. He could technically play on the inside. I think you really got to watch out for this guy because I keep talking about versatility. He is that. He's 6'3", 250, runs a 4.75, man. And I am, dude, if I'm able to trade into the later part of the developmental draft, which I think that's probably where he'll go if he does get picked, that's a steal. You're not going to get him probably for 2023 because he's a sophomore, but 2024, 2025, in that range, Noah Sewell could be a great addition to your linebacker core. I think he should be very good. Strong dude. I'm interested to see how Oregon uses it because he can do it all really on defense. All right, time for his DBs. We got Jay Ward, senior out of LSU. He is he's a monster. He one of the few things that shined bright on LSU's defense last year. I think that at 6'1", 176, he could be a little bit bigger. Runs a 4.45, though very fast. In 2020, he had about 29 or 30 tackles, 3 passes intercepted. I think Jay is just a super athletic safety, man. I don't know if you can say enough about him, honestly. When you really look at him, he could kind of play multiple areas with that size and that speed. But I really think he's going to be a good safety in the NFL. You got to look out for him. He's going to be a senior, so he's definitely entering next year's draft class. Be on the lookout for him. He's my top DB to get in this developmental draft. And then next up, we got BJ Williamson out of Louisiana Tech. Yeah, we got a lot of Louisiana guys on here. Redshirt junior. Probably didn't expect your Conference USA player on this list. But yes, I think you got to pay him some respect, man. He played great. He got all sorts of awards last year, of course. It's not like he was in the SEC or anything, so take that with a grain of salt. But just a total stud. And I think you really got to be on the lookout for him. I'm trying to pull up his 40 right now. Let's see. I'm not able to pull it up right now. I had another tab open, but I'm not seeing it. But yeah, I think that BJ Williamson is a guy that could be good. I don't know if he'll go, honestly, in our developmental draft, just because I think a good bit of running backs are going to eat up a lot of the spaces where these guys can get picked up at. And then last up, we got Christopher Smith, a senior from Georgia. Just another tackling machine out in UGA, man. I mean, that team's just filled with defensive talent year after year for the most part. Honestly, in some ways, and this might not be a fair comparison because this guy was a stud in the NFL, but reminds me a lot of Thomas Davis, honestly, where if you put on some weight, you could definitely put him on outside linebacker. But with that speed, just he could easily play safety. So someone to definitely watch. And in that matter, you could also kind of compare him to Jeremy Chin, who's a current Carolina Panther, but obviously didn't play at Georgia. I think you definitely gotta pay some respect to Christopher Smith. I think he got overshadowed just in that top tier Georgia defense last year, but definitely someone I think this year could be someone whose name you see a lot jumping out on the TV when you're watching College Game Day. Well, that's it, guys. That's all we got for our 2022 developmental draft rankings. I'm looking forward to next week when we do the developmental draft show. That's going to be a lot of fun next Saturday. I've been looking out for that. And just a reminder again, keep your deadline coming up early May. We'll see you guys later. Best of luck to everyone participating in the developmental draft.